Hi everybody. Now, I've just finished playing the Resident Evil 3 remake on PC, and I'm currently just finishing off the Resident Evil 2 remake as well, and I've really enjoyed them. I mean, really enjoyed them. I love the atmosphere that Capcom bring to these games, especially in the early part of the game, when you're kind of wandering around and it's just you exploring with a few zombies, and not the big bosses that come a little bit later on. And I've kind of always been a fan of the Resident Evil series, but never really played beyond the original Resident Evil 2, Resident Evil Nemesis, and that was it really. Never really played any of the others. But it's kind of got me wondering, what would an official Resident Evil and DayZ crossover event look like? What could it include? Because Resident Evil especially are known for doing crossover events. They've done them with Dead by Daylight. They've done them with PUBG Mobile. Now, I know DayZ aren't that well known for doing crossover events. In fact, they haven't really done any official ones, even with Armour, from the same developer and publisher. But who knows? Things like this could happen. So what could there be? So I was thinking that you could kind of, I've done a video about this already, you may well have seen it, where you could kind of tie the Resident Evil universe and the DayZ universe together, even if it was just for a short period of time, even if it was in like part of the multiverse or something. And the idea is that the problems that have occurred in Chernarus and Livonia and Namalsk and all these other places, the virus that has caused what's happened to people, is a variant of Umbrella Corporation's T-virus or the G-virus or something like that. So what happened over in Racoon City in Resident Evil 2 eventually made its way to Eastern Europe and Chernarus and infected the people and made them who they are. So that kind of ties it together. And maybe the whole world is like this, or maybe there's only small chunks around the world that are like this. So maybe it's like Racoon City, which ended up getting nuked, didn't it? And then maybe you've got Chernarus and Livonia, but there's other areas, but the rest of the world is okay. So that's kind of how you could pull it together. And I was thinking, well, what could you add in specifically to DayZ? Because DayZ is an ongoing game, isn't it? It's almost like a live service game where it keeps going and keeps going and keeps going. Whereas the Resident Evil games, apart from the multiplayer game, which I can't remember what it's called now, but they're done, aren't they? It's not like, I suppose you could have some DLC, couldn't you? But I'm really thinking about what Resident Evil stuff could you bring to DayZ, and I'm thinking maybe in one of the cities in Chernarus or Livonia, you could bring in the Racoon City police station, that iconic museum that then became a police station, with the statue in the lobby. It'd be really cool if they could build underneath the map, and I know that's pretty difficult with the DayZ engine, but put in like the Racoon City sewers from Resident Evil 2, or maybe even you could just have rooms inside some of the other rooms, so you could have like the lobby for the Racoon City police station with the statue, or you could have like remember the police chief's room, the one with all the stuffed animals in? That would be quite cool. Or like we have the bunker now on Livonia. You could have another bunker, but it could be like the underground research facility for Resident Evil 2. So it was like a hospital, all crisp and white, until you get to the areas where you've got the blood along the walls. And then I was thinking other stuff you could have as well that's a little bit more subtle. The various containers, the hundreds of containers that are around the map, and you've got red ones, green ones, blue ones, and military ones. Maybe you could have some that had like the Umbrella logo on them. And maybe there would be a small bit of toxic gas around them. And in fact, around the cities and the villages and towns, maybe there could be posters, maybe recruitment posters for Umbrella, but in Russian, in Cyrillic, for this kind of branch of the Umbrella Corporation. Or maybe the C-130 crash that we can easily put into the game. Maybe like the crashed C-130 at Northwest Airfield, maybe that's an Umbrella one, and there's some barrels in the back with the Umbrella biohazard kind of markings on it. Or even that you could have Umbrella branded crashed helicopters, with the UBCS guys in from Resident Evil 3, well, the zombie versions of them. Or even, that we now have the new military convoy events, don't we? We have the police events where you have a number of vehicles spawning together. You could have that, but it could be umbrella themed, again maybe with a container that's split open and there's some goo coming out of it, or some toxic gas, or there's some barrels with that sort of stuff. So they could be like static things. How about, the thing about the Resident Evil zombies from like Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3, they're very slow moving, and you've got to get headshots to kill them, but maybe alter the movement speed of the DayZ zombies of some of them to be like that, so they never run, they just keep on coming towards you, and if you shoot them they fall down, but unless you've done a headshot and blown their head off, they get back up again, and it's all slow stuff. Or the dogs, like the zombie dogs from they're cool. And then going a bit more outlandish, but you could have like the liquor, couldn't you? Monster, or you could even bring in some of the bosses like Nemesis or Mr. X, or that William fella, the guy who Resident Evil 2 who gradually turns into a worse and worse monster, and he's got those big eyeballs on his body. But you could also go small as well. You could have like the herbs, and you could combine them to make things like the medicine that heals you completely, gets you to full health, but it would also, when you mix them, I think you have the 3 herbs, it could protect you against things like food poisoning, or even toxic gas poisoning, although I don't know, herb probably wouldn't do that as well. But you could also have like the first aid sprays, so again, if you're bleeding, instead of having to use a bandage or something like that, use a first aid spray, your bleeding stops and your health goes up a bit. Weapon side is a little bit more difficult because there's plenty of weapons in DayZ. I guess you could brand them with like umbrella or stars or things like that, but maybe you could add the acid rounds for the M79. But I do think there is lots of room for Resident Evil themed clothing and gear, so you could have like stars themed outfits, or Claire, Leon or Jill outfits and backpacks. And like the police uniform, you could also have like a Racoon City Police Department uniform, couldn't you? And you could have the logos, even if it's only a little thing on things like hip pouches. I think one of the things that Resident Evil always does really well are the readable lore items, isn't there? You pick these things up, and not only do they tell you a bit more of a story, but they're often helping you solve puzzles. So we could have more of those, or at least some of those, because I don't think there's any of that in vanilla DayZ at all. But maybe what we could also bring in as well is a proper locked door system. Instead of just having doors that you lock with pick locks, maybe some of them would have like heart-shaped keys. You have to have the heart-shaped key, or the diamond key, or the club key, all those sorts of things. You could have that lockable door system, which might be cool. Maybe, I don't know, maybe even some Resident Evil style puzzles to get into the bunkers and things. We have to find a particular medallion and slot it into an opening, and then the door opens. And other things as well. Now, these might not have to be working, but it'd be pretty cool if they would. You could have like the typewriter save system, where maybe you had to find an ink ribbon. Then if you use the typewriter, that would then save your character at that particular point. Or the typewriter could just be in the game, just as an object that they could place in places, just to give it that Resident Evil feel, along with the inventory box system as well. Again, this is a bit far-fetched, but you open a box up, maybe it would have to be tied to your character. You open it up, you put something in there, and then it appears when you find that box on another side of the map, you can then take the stuff out again. Again, not really sure how immersive that is, but just to have the box there would be quite funny. Maybe the box has a crack in it to show that it's broken, so it can't do that anymore. VCRs as well. I mean, I've really been talking about things from Resident Evil 2 and Resident Evil 3 remakes, but think about like from Resident Evil 7. When you watch the VCRs, the videotapes, they look really cool. And I think there's definitely at least one videotape in Resident Evil 2 remake that you could watch, and that would be good. And also the film. You could find the rolls of film and then develop them somewhere, and they would give you clues to things, or even just fill in some of the lore around the map. So there we go. There's some of my ideas for like an official Resident Evil and DayZ crossover event where Resident Evil things are coming to DayZ. I'm sure there's loads more ideas, and I'm sure you'll add them to the comment section below. But I think the two games they're very similar in the way that they create this feeling, you know, this atmosphere, this of foreboding when you're moving around, and then you have this intense action that happens. Gosh, it'd be really cool. I think it'd be really amazing if somehow we could bring the games together for some sort of event. Anyway, that's enough from me. As I say, what do you think? Put your questions in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, hit like. If you want to see more of the same, press subscribe, and I will of course see you again soon.